All right, so it's time for this video on our lesson this week, 1 Peter chapter 5. It's just an amazing passage of scripture, not just because of its content, but also because of who wrote it. The Peter you read about in the Gospels is not the same Peter that wrote 1st and 2nd Peter. Oh, well, yes, it's the same man, same body, but a very transformed Peter. And you really see that in this chapter. And I'm going to really focus on that in this video. I hope that you will utilize it and work it into your lesson. First of all, though, and I think the curriculum mentions this, but I want to point out that in verse 1 and 2, you have three terms that are used interchangeably of what we refer to as the office of pastor. The term elders, which is verse 1, is the Greek word presbyteros, and he tells the elders to shepherd the flock or pastor the flock or feed the flock. It's the Greek term poimen. It's where we get the term pastor from. He tells them to exercise oversight, which is the Greek word episkopos, which is where you get the term bishop from, that some denominations use of their pastors. But all three of those terms are talking about the same people, the people who lead congregations, that lead flocks. So they all refer to to the same office. They don't refer to different levels of authority or hierarchy like you see within the Catholic system. Another thing to demonstrate is right off the bat, we see Peter's humility. Even before he exhorts them to be humble, we see his humility by how he refers to himself as your fellow elder. So here's Peter, an apostle, leader of the church, but he refers to himself as your fellow elder, as an equal. Nowhere does he ever imply that he's a Pontifex Maximus or a pope, as the Catholic Church later tries to rewrite history back into the Bible and make that the case. I was going to share some of that, but I'm not going to now. But anyways, you can look that up. That's a term, that's an idea that came about 200 or 300 years later for political reasons. Anyways, his exhortation to them to shepherd the flock is exactly what Jesus commanded him to do in John chapter 21, when Jesus was basically restoring him after his denial. He approaches him three times. Do you love me? Do you love me? The second time, after Peter responds, he responds with the term poimen, shepherd the flock, or feed the flock, as the King James translates it. That's in John 21:16. So how they are to do that is as humble servants, not as proudful, pushy leaders who lord their authority over their congregations, which we see a lot of in our modern day. But when you think about Peter during his life in the Gospels, you can see him being that kind of person. And so again, I think you see this huge transformation where now you have this humble man who's referring to himself humbly and exhorting them to be humble in how they lead others. But prior to that, we saw a very proudful Peter who wasn't afraid to argue even with Jesus about what would or wouldn't happen or what he would or wouldn't do. Matthew 16:21-23 says, from that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan, you are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. In Matthew 26:33, Peter answers Jesus and says, though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away. This is a very proud person prior to his denial, prior to his being attacked or being targeted by Satan, which is really where we see the second manifestation of Peter's transformation as he instructs people to be sober, these elders to be sober and to be alert when it comes to Satan's desire to destroy you. Why does he go there? Because he's experienced this. He wasn't sober. He wasn't alert. He wasn't humble. Luke chapter 22, verse 31 through 34. Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you, that he may sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. And Peter said to him, Lord, I'm ready to go with you both to prison and to death. Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you deny 3 times that you know me. So Jesus was in effect telling Peter, hey, your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion, seeks to devour you. And Peter didn't listen. So now Peter is exhorting those under his authority, under his influence, to not be like him, to be aware, to be alert. So I think there's a really good application moment here. You need to urge your class to not think of themselves as above any sin. Peter did. He said, I'll never do that. When you think of yourself as above any sin, then you're not being alert and sober and realize how vulnerable you are to Satan. Satan is looking for that. He's looking for the proud. He's looking for the person who he can attack because they think they can't fall, and they can't fall in that particular area. And on top of that, verse 5 in this passage tells us that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. So you're not going to have God's help. He may very well allow Satan to humble you because of your pride. One other observation, just going in a slightly different place here in verses 10 and 11, notice the contrast that Peter makes between suffering being for a little while in verse 10 and the glory of God which will endure forever in verse 11. And Peter knew about the glory of God. He actually witnessed it. He was on the Mount of Transfiguration, literally seeing Jesus in his glory. So he had a taste of that glory. And he reminds those that are suffering that nothing can compare to that glory that they're going to experience forever, as opposed to the little time of the suffering they have now. It's similar to Paul's words in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 17 and 18, where he says, for this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, they're temporary, they're just for a little while. But the things that are unseen are eternal. So let me leave you with one summary thought that a long time ago, as I was reading through this passage, I wrote this in the margin of my Bible, basically focusing on what's there in verses 6 through 8. Humble yourself, as verse 6 says, or God may let Satan humble you. That's the choice you have. Humble yourself, or God will humble you. And a lot of times he'll use Satan, and those will be very, very unpleasant days. I hope this helps, and I'll see you on Sunday.